The reports of my death have been greatly exaggerated. I've been getting messages from folks around the world asking how I'm doing. As you can see, I'm doing just dandy. I'm here in Ground Zero, Guadalajara, Mexico. Most of you by now have probably heard of what is transpiring, what has transpired, what is transpiring, and I thought I'd give my 2 cents if people have been asking. So this will be a solo cast, a solo podcast, a departure from my usual guest interview podcast. Do let me know if you like or appreciate the solo casts, so I can do more of them. I've always been meaning to, but just never have the time that I need. And let me just start by sharing my screen here for people who are viewing, because I've got a lot of media material. All right, and I know some of you are listening, but there's been a lot of Mexicans sharing memes. Someone shared this clip from The Office. This is what it was like for Mexicans Sunday morning. All right, but yeah, in all seriousness, here's another meme. Marco Rubio realizing he's going to have to be the new leader of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, and he's dressed as a narco. And here's another one from Not Jerome Powell. Mexican drug cartels just found out why Palantir is a $320 billion company. But in all seriousness, here are 2 clips that I took. So Sunday morning, as some of you know, I have a love-hate relationship with technology, and so my phone was in airplane mode. So, Sunday is Sunday. It's kind of analog day, and I didn't check my phone, and we leave the house. And here's the first clip I take just down the street from me. Well, basically, we were on our way to church, and we came across 4 narco blockades. So here's, I think this was the second one.
Good morning from Mexico. We got a narco blockade right here, burn truck. Welcome to Mexico, my friends.
So, I'm not really good with that live on the spot shooting stuff. And so I was driving and filming. Here's the second one. So we had passed the small car that was burned, and then this truck that was burned. And then the third vehicle was this bus, which is right near the stadium where some of the World Cup football games are supposed to take place.
All right, I'm on my way to church, and this is the third burned vehicle that I can see. Check it out, a bus. Check that out.
And so, as we were driving, we still weren't clear as to what was going, but I thought, we're already on our way to church. We might as well keep going. Nothing stops us, COVID, narcos. And then, turning and going down the street, we came across another bus that was a narco blockade. And effectively what was going on was generally civilians weren't targeted. They, I think by now the numbers in terms of vehicles is close to 300, maybe more. They were telling people to get, I'll show you some clips up ahead, but they were telling people to get out of their car or evacuate the bus, or get out of the car, and then setting fire to the cars to block roads and streets. And I think that stuff may still be going on the highways around Mexico, but not in the towns or cities anymore. And then just before, here's another example. This is in Guadalajara. I don't go down this road, but near it. Here's the scene of someone narcos kicking someone out of their car and then burning the car. See the guy on the right getting out, and the left, people got out of the car. Got 3 narcos pouring gasoline on the car. Blocked the road, and effectively, I'll get into this a bit later, it's got a feeling of Operation Gladio strategy of terror, strategy of tension, and here's collateral damage. They set fire also to a number of OXXOs, the corner stores, and this woman, she was the collateral damage. She suffered, I think, 10% of her body on fire. An OXXO worker. Here's an OXXO worker got caught fire, I guess. Yeah. She survived. And here's another clip of a convenience store getting set on fire.
Dice que quién fue el que se niñito.
¿Dónde salen mejor los masculinos?
Es que
Acted not fast enough there. But,
otra se hace muy mal.
¿Se puede pausar?
so they set fire to the shop, and here's a clip of the kid. The face is blurred out, crying at the hospital, suffering burns. And then, before I continue, so we go to church and we realize what's going on. And then on the way back, was a ghost town. So it was something that I had never seen before or witnessed in all of my time here in Mexico. We've had maybe 10 years ago, they done the narco blockades, never to this extent. And, I remember 10 years ago, maybe passing by, leaving the city, one narco blockade, one bus burned. But what we felt this Sunday, I was listening to Sunday Bloody Sunday by you too. I'd never seen this before. And many Mexicans say in Guadalajara, they've never seen this before. I think I've heard reports in Vallarta, we've never seen this before. And the streets were a ghost town. So we were like, do we hunker down or do we go home? And I'm just like, we're going to waste the day hunkering down. I think the worst happened in the morning. And so we drove across the city back home, complete ghost town. All shops, even the corner taco stores that we usually go to for lunch, closed. Everything closed. Never seen this before. Everything completely closed. It was like COVID or an alien invasion or a 15-minute city lockdown, climate lockdown. No cars on the street. A few stragglers here and there. And then the danger would have been on our way back if, we took an alternate route and we could have been stopped. I think the chance was really like 1%. But in theory, we could have been stopped by narcos and told to evacuate the car, and then they would have burned the vehicle. But in any case, we're back yesterday, the day after Monday. It was a narco holiday. So we had our first annual narco holiday where everything was shut, banks, schools, supermarkets, shops, places of work. So that was Monday. And then Monday, late afternoon, some supermarkets began to open up again. And today we're back to normal. I was out of the house today and felt like a normal day, but I did feel in the air that there was this feeling of a bit of a tension because people don't know, if something can explode again. So I'm going to continue with some of the media that I have here. Clips. Here's excavators being used by cartels on some highways to basically cut up the highway. They've got narco blockades, cars on fire, and they're digging up the highway with excavators. Here's just more footage of rows of burned trucks, buses, cars outside of Jalisco's capital on the road to Tapalpa, where El Mencho was captured. We've got, now, I don't know if this was real or not. It seems real. This looks like it's in Guadalajara. There's some woman crouching by a bus stop, and the guy's asking, what is she doing?
Señora, ¿está bien? ¿Qué hacen ahí?
And she's, I guess they were burning cars in the parking lot, and there was a gunshot. We've also got, so the AI stuff, here's Joe Dolio, who I've interviewed on TNT Radio. I never share stuff from accounts like this Global Updates, where they show an image and text. I hate it. I absolutely hate it. It supposedly gets you more clicks if you don't include a link. I always include a link. I cannot not include a link to a source because otherwise it's just clickbait. And this is an AI generated video. Joe says AI always screws up the fingers. This guy, soldier purportedly, or cartel members, has got 6 fingers holding a rocket. Fake news. Okay. And then here's just more clips of this is in my city. You can see this clip where they're telling drivers to get out and truck drivers evacuate your vehicle because they want to block the highway. So yeah, there's that. What else we got? And then let me just jump real quick to. Well, I'll get to it, but basically there was a lot of fake news about the airport in Guadalajara and Puerto Vallarta. Tourists weren't attacked, tourists weren't kidnapped. There was no violence at the airport, as far as I can tell. The U.S. Embassy tweeted about that. Civilians weren't targeted again. It was the vehicles and shops, and if you didn't get out of the shop fast enough, I guess you got collateral damage. Gas stations as well were attempted to be torched. Here they killed El Mencho's right-hand man. They say this is, I guess, yesterday, who masterminded some of the, quote, blockades and fires. He put a bounty on Mexican soldiers' heads. They say he was killed in a shootout. You've also got just now today, I guess the second in command of Mexican National Guard was killed by a roadside IED or bomb. Here's a video.
Mira, ya se paró. No, aguanta.
So it's still ongoing. The World Cup news. Here's a meme about the guy who picked Guadalajara as a World Cup venue. You've got tourists arriving in Mexico to attend the World Cup, and it's a scene from D-Day Normandy. And reports now, will FIFA take the host rights away from Guadalajara? I think they should. Frankly, I think they should. Any sort of pressure to get it through the thick skulls of the narco government that we've long past crossed the Rubicon. At least allow you guys do whatever dark operations you're going to do, but allow the citizenry, like the Italian mafia in the old days or whatever, allow us to live our lives, and you do what you do in the shadows. But now it's like avocados and limes, and you open the business, it's extortion. It's like, this is insane. This just cannot continue. So yeah, cancel the World Cup in Mexico. I vote for it. I'm all for it. Here's a scene: America deporting soccer fans. Mexico civil war over Mencho's death in Canada. Transgender mass shooters. FIFA realizing they can't change host nations now.
We fucked up.
All right. And another strange thing, Mexicans are commenting on how it was a ghost town. There was no government presence anywhere. So in some ways, it felt like the government stood down. Many are saying the government didn't plan the operation very well to expect this blowback. So there were no police patrols when we were going home on Sunday. We've even got foreigners, gringos, raiding Oxos. Here's a clip of a Canadian.
American right here, guys.
I'm Mexican, and you should be ashamed to live to doing all those things.
And then what else we got going on? The Costco. People are emailing me saying, no, the Costco in Guadalajara was burning. I'm like, no, it wasn't. It was in Vallarta. And I confirmed it is the Vallarta Costco, and it wasn't the building itself. It was the cars. So basically the cars again. And that was fact-checked by Mexico News Daily, who I really like. Already you can see them cleaning up the vehicles in Puerto Vallarta. So yeah, and I thought this was interesting. Barry Cooper, who I follow, he said he was living in Mexico for a while. His wife, I think, is Filipino, and he's from the Philippines. And he says they returned to live in Puerto Vallarta, but quickly left after his spider sense determined Mexico was no longer safe. He says Mexicans were extremely racist towards him because of Trump's immigration policies. I have not seen that at all. Here's a map from El Huaso, who's a good source on the many different states in Mexico where there is retaliatory activity. And then this was a good piece by Zero Hedge on what might continue, which says the cartel is designed to survive without El Mencho. They say that the fall does not mean the end of the cartel. More than 250 blockades were not aimed at rescuing him, but were a criminal resume. Plaza bosses flexing muscle to dispute the leadership. The risk is not immediate, but it says the rearrangement of the power structure can take weeks or months to explode, so we could see more blowback. And then it goes on to say, and I can't disagree with this assessment. So this is coming from analyst Miguel Alfonso Meza of Defense Source X on X, that Scheinbaum knew the elimination would trigger a massive terrorist reaction, and the repercussions are collective trauma in the population, hundreds of deadly and economic victims, the establishment of a de facto military state of exception in several regions of the country, the international perception Mexico is at war and incapable of guaranteeing security against cartels 3 months before the World Cup, fuel for Trump's interventionist discourse. And they say there were better alternatives, arresting the most important witness instead of assassinating him, dismantling the cartel instead of beheading it, inhibiting terrorism and protecting the population. The government of Scheinbaum was clearly incapable and negligent in the face of the cartel's terrorist reaction. The attacks did not just spread throughout the country. The government kept us in an information blackout and left us abandoned. And that's how we feel. And the assassination of El Mencho marks the rest of Scheinbaum's government, a president who decided to expose millions of Mexicans to unleashed terrorism. And so you've got the U.S. ambassador arriving in Mexico City now, wants to have Scheinbaum explain why they killed Mencho instead of sending him to the U.S. alive, which is interesting. And then Leon Barrena Rodriguez and partners, this was a good assessment by them. They said development in Jalisco reinforced the assessment outlined in our previous report. The elimination of Mencho represents the clearest operational validation to date of Mexico's quiet realignment under U.S. pressure. I've said this previously, so it seems like Mexico is bending to U.S. pressure. The U.S. is pressuring Mexico to clean up. So basically, they're doing what the U.S. is telling them. No oil to Cuba. You've got the FBI interventions and other maneuvers in Mexico. When they grabbed the Canadian drug trafficker, and other examples that we're seeing like that sprinkled throughout. And they continue here. And so I think Washington is effectively pressuring Mexico to clean up shop. And I'll get to this for the North American Technate, the North American Union. That's the short end of it. Here they say multiple sources, including regional outlets, indicate the operation was conducted as a joint action between U.S. and Mexican special operations forces. It's highly unlikely that such a target could have been neutralized without real-time intelligence fusion, technical surveillance, cross-border coordination, all that sort of stuff. And it says this outcome would not have materialized under symbolic cooperation alone. It reflects sustained U.S. pressure, calibrated intelligence sharing, and the operational conditioning of Mexican units over the past year. And so you're seeing this tighter integration. Here it says the broader implication is structural. The integration of Mexico into the U.S. security architecture is no longer theoretical, but operational. If Mencho has indeed been neutralized through joint action, it confirms that the shift we identified is already producing irreversible consequences. The strategic center of gravity is moving toward a binational security framework. So again, integration in all areas, economic, security. In my weekly analysis a week or two ago, when it came to the critical minerals sector, the U.S. and Mexico there were also integrating. This is a great old clip from Luis Chaparro. He's a good guy to follow. He talks about Mencho, and I'm thinking of him as the Mexican Osama bin Laden. Like, he says half of the narcos think he's alive, half think he's dead. Nobody knows. Body hasn't been found. They did say supposedly they would, through DNA, they validated his body, but it's and I'll get to this idea that the CJNG, the Jalisco Nueva Generación cartel links to CIA deep politics, and in that sense, he is sort of like a Mexican bin Laden.
I think we touched superficially last night about if El Mencho really exists, right? The leader of the new generation Jalisco cartel. It's been years, probably a decade, since his last photo. We've been hearing his voice popping up here and there, but with an AI, it's super easy to replicate a voice. We don't even know if that's him. It's super easy to start a whole fucking cartel that is a Psyop, right? It's like, does the Jalisco New Generation Cartel really exist, or is that a Psyop? Because you see the soldiers, but you never see the higher-ups. You never see who's leading. You never see people like El Chapo, that he was arrested a couple of times and he was like escaping prisons. El Mayo Zambada giving out an interview with Julio Scherer from Proceso magazine. Los Chapitos, very out there. They even had their own socials at some point. But the leaders of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, those guys are dressed up properly as a army. They know of strategy, they know of trends, they know of weapons, they know how to weaponize a drone, IEDs, and they have this mythical leadership called El Mencho that we don't know if it's still alive or dead, and that's dividing that cartel. Half of that cartel is saying he's dead, and half of the same cartel is saying no, he's pretty much alive.
And so now you have the Mexican Defense Secretary saying 80% of the weapons seized from cartels are of U.S. origin. So you've got Israeli weapons and American military weapons arming the cartels. They get training in Ukraine and Israel and U.S. Add to what Luis just said. Could this be another example of, here's an image of three images in one, Cartel Jalisco Nueva Generación, ISIS, and Azov. And we know ISIS is financed and armed, trained by the West, Azov, and now CJNG. Ron Paul did a good report on it, although Daniel McAdams was showing clips. Again, some of these clips are years old, so there's people rehashing clips that are years and years old. And Brandon Weikart, I'm going to try to get him on next week. He's been saying some interesting stuff. He says, I'm telling you, this thing in Mexico, the cartels are working for us. Scheinbaum just fled to some Mexican Navy ship off the coast. That some people are saying that has been debunked. In any case, she's out, and when the cat's away, the mice will play. We wanted to get rid of Scheinbaum, who was a real problem. So far, it's happening. He continues in another post. He says, now the FBI, who is it, the State Bureau of International Narcotics, has a $5 million reward for Pelon, I guess another leader. And just Brandon says, just more evidence that what I've been saying about CJNG and Mencho is correct. This is a covert operation meant to create problem-solution reaction that leads to U.S. military intervention in Mexico. So we're getting there. Another clip just today from cartel members stopping a semi-truck driver, telling him to stop with weapons, to turn his car to block the road, and they shoot out the tires. You can see here shooting out the tires and fleeing. And then here's a clip from Fox News. Notice again the narrative of intervention. War, civil war.
I'm talking to a lot of people and a lot of my sources on the ground in Mexico, and it's essentially pure chaos. As you can see from the images there's burning, there's rioting, there's attacks. I mean, it is all out warfare in certain parts of Mexico, and it's quite concerning. And in certain cities, there's zero public transportation. CJNG and all the affiliates have threatened all bus drivers and all taxi drivers that if they're moving their vehicles around, they will be shot and killed. There's videos out there of taxis being overtaken and just open warfare on the streets. So it's extremely concerning that we're seeing this. And this is what it is right on the brink of possible civil war, because there are so many different factions under CJNG. CJNG isn't necessarily just a group. It is more of an umbrella of a conglomerate of numerous smaller cartels. Now, each one of these cartels, with El Mencho being taken out, all these leaders of these smaller cartels are all going to try and vie for that top dog spot, and they're going to fight, and they're going to utilize all their weapons.
We've got, so I had this guest on to the day, almost, basically, a year ago, he's coming back on next week, Rico Danielson, and he said he predicted you will see the first U.S. airstrike on Mexican soil on cartels this year in 2025. We didn't see that, but the trajectory he painted is pretty.
I have a prediction, and this might not be the best prediction, but I think you will see the first U.S. airstrike on Mexican soil on cartels. I think you'll see that this year. I have a prediction, and usually I don't leave my predictions, but I'm pretty right. I see it coming, and because of the lay of the land of warfare, the type of soldiers that we're about to use, and I'm like, I mean, these are tier 1 guys. Like they hunt, breed, kill people. Like I don't think the cartel really knows what they're up against, man. Yes, they had their reign, so it's coming.
So there's that, and then someone pointed out 2 weeks ago, Navy SEAL Team 2 had headed to Mexico on a training mission. What does that say again, right? Brandon continues. He says, I'm pretty sure the U.S. just covertly effected regime change in Mexico using the cartels as a cutout to achieve this Herculean task. And then he's citing past mainstream media articles where they're citing a Mexican official who says CIA manages the drug trade. And another layer to that are the resources. People have pointed out, I can't remember, it was Osvaldo Zavala, who I've interviewed. You can check the archive. Him and others have pointed out, isn't it interesting how a lot of the cartel activity takes place? Obviously, from the cartel perspective, they want money than the resources, the lithium, the oil, the silver, those sorts of minerals. But again, if the cartel is a cutout for the U.S., the globalist American empire, well, then it's no wonder they are where the minerals, the silver is, and the oil and the lithium in Mexico. And here, Kathleen Tyson points out, Mexico leads the world in silver production, a quarter of global supply. And that, we just had the 10 Canadian miners. They were Mexican miners working for the Canadian company, and they were killed. And here it says, if Trump goes in and occupies mining operations with U.S. military on the pretense of a cartel, he gets to screw Mexico and Canada together and gets guaranteed silver production and profits. And I've got some longer clips. I'm not going to play them here, but I'll include them all in the show notes. So if you're listening to the audio podcast on Apple, Spotify, Overcast, Podcast Addict, Podcast Index, wherever, you can just look in the podcast description or go to the website or go to the Substack or wherever you're watching. You'll have the list of the show notes. If you want to click on all this stuff that I'm showing, it'll be there. Nayib Bukele gave a 3-minute in Spanish clip that was, I think, was related to this. It's got English subtitles, but he's saying, how is it possible that in bigger countries in Europe, those governments control their territory, but in Mexico, the government can't control the territory? He's making some good points there, and I'll get to this. So this is from Ruben Luengas. He's been on my Spanish edition of the podcast, and I've been twice on his program in Spanish. And he brings up this. I listened to his live stream last night, and here's a clip from 6 years ago where he's discussing this book. You can find it online for free. It's from the 1990s. Peter Schweizer and Caspar Weinberger, who I think was the Subsecretary of Defense in the Reagan, something like that. It's called The Next War, and there's a chapter in it where it discusses, so this is in the 90s, it discusses the cartel situation getting out of control in Mexico and the U.S. invading Mexico. In fact, let me stop my share and pull up, see if I can share the PDF here. Here we go. Is it coming up? It is, I think. So here's a clip for The Next War. I've got the PDF here, and it says in chapter 14, if we move into Mexico, there won't be much resistance because the only people who like, I guess, the president are the party. It says, I don't know who Ruiz is. This is a fictional scenario they've created in this book, and it says his government will fall immediately, the Mexican president's government in this scenario, and then we can set up an interim government to run the country and hold elections in 6 months. And then if you scan through, it says the New York Times published that the headline that White House contemplates military option for Mexico. So that's on the table, and they have a map here of Mexico, which shows Pentagon's operational plan for the liberation of Mexico. And you've got arrows from Mexico, from Texas and Nuevo Laredo, heading and from the Gulf of Mexico heading into Tampico, and north of Mexico City and to Guadalajara, and from Phoenix, Arizona, south of that into Mexico. U.S. forces conduct operations in central Mexico. So this was mapped out, and then it says there. I guess it implies there's a counter guerrilla war in Zacatecas, and then effectively, I haven't read this yet, but that they take out the Mexican government and have new, quote, democratic elections, and that's how they take care of this situation. Now, let me just get back real quick to Trump today saying,
we would be honored. So Mexico is saying that I offered to send U.S. troops into Mexico to take care of the cartel. She wants to know, is that true? Do you think I'm going to answer that question?
That's why I'm asking. We'll see.
I will answer it. It's true. Absolutely. Because they are horrible people that have been killing people left and right, they've made a fortune on selling drugs and destroying our people. We lost 300,000 people last year to fentanyl and drugs.
So Trump says that he would be honored to help Mexico, sending in U.S. forces into Mexico to combat the narcos. I won't play these clips, but we had Patrick Henningsen, who was out in Puerto Vallarta. He did a 9-minute update. So you can check that out. My colleague James Guzman did a 7-minute, his 2 cents. So that'll be linked below, as well as Ed Calderon, who's been on the podcast. He did a 13-minute update on his Instagram, which was just taken down. I wanted to go back and get further updates from him today. And I'm like, but 2 days ago, I was on his Instagram. What's going on? I can't find it. Instagram took down his account again. And yeah, it's in my Telegram. I uploaded the video, so I'll include the link again in the show notes for that if you want to check those clips out. So Dan Dix has been doing some good updates, and he's still in Vallarta, but he says everything has returned back to normal. So like I said, we're pretty much back to normal now in Mexico, but you've still got on the highways and byways narco blockades. And I'll come to my conclusion in a second. And so Jason Christoph, Dan Dix, Max Egan did a walkabout. And so I think they've done some interesting updates. And Christoph had a good point. It was almost like COVID lockdown training again. And getting us used to standing in lines outside of supermarkets. Again, I went to the supermarket today. Everything was normal. So sometimes people are all over the place. I think he was going a bit too far because things close and open up slowly. But I do have this sense that this is some sort of strategy of tension, Gladio. This is deep politics. The cartels are probably linked to U.S. Now the question is to what extent, right? To what extent? It's not like the CIA controls 100% of any said cartel. I don't think it's as simple. So these people in the conspiracy world, you can't just say, "Oh, CIA controls CJNG." I don't think it's that simple. So there's like a shifting degree spectrum of how much pressure they can apply from the U.S. Maybe not. I haven't heard anyone explain satisfactorily, give an answer to this. But so getting sort of to my point, I won't be surprised. Like I was joking, I won't be surprised if Scheinbaum and the Mexican government come out this week and say, "See, if only you registered your cell phones and gave us your facial biometrics for the Cuerpo Biométrico Mexican national ID, this wouldn't have happened." I can bet, because you can bet, Aaron Day was in Vallarta and he said, "I'm already against the technocracy they're going to propose as the solution to this Gladio cartel, Mencho event." Because they just a few weeks ago, globalist Scheinbaum, Narco Presidenta, said, "Let's get rid of cash. Let's get rid of cash and digitize everything so we can control you. Let's get your face, biometrics, register your phones." And then Curtis Stone said, "I believe this is exactly what's happening in Mexico. From a macro perspective, this is all about the consolidation of the North American Union." So I've been saying that this account says the cartels stand between the formation of a North American Union, so they must be eliminated with impunity. look at what happened in El Salvador with drug gangs. It's about to happen here. El Salvador is the blueprint for NWO nations. And I think I've been saying that for the longest time. You know, Spiro Skouras, he says, could the chaos in Mexico be a deliberate setup to justify direct U.S. intervention? And my formula basically is U.S. Civil War 2.0 plus Mexican-American War 2.0 equals North American Union. I said it 1 year ago on Ruben Luengas's program, which he titled Chaos and Balkanization, the plan for Mexico, where I posited that they want to balkanize North America. The EU is the model again. So the World War was the model. The Continental European War was the model to then get the solution of European Technate. So they did the Technate first in Europe. And then they need to, you know, they've been able to do it peacefully so far in Africa and Southeast Asia, as ASEAN. And then they did the Bukele model starting in El Salvador. And Bukele has said he wants a Central American Union model in the EU. And America is a big beast. So you've got to do death by 1,000 cuts with America because it's so powerful and big and wealthy. And they're trying to gin up the U.S. Civil War 2.0. They're having a hard time. They're creating deep events, the Kirk event, all this to radicalize the left and right and try to get Americans fighting. And I posited that if that's not enough, they can start a second Mexican-American war to add to the fuel to the fire. So you've got chaos going within the United States. You've got chaos going within Mexico and between the United States and Mexico. And then that's the perfect setting to pop off this sort of explosion and then have multiple civil wars or war between country. And when all the dust settles, that can then segue into North American Union. Again, these are just theories. But I think that's the big picture. Most of this has to do with getting the Technate together. So it's not any wonder where they deal first with the border areas, Venezuela, Greenland, Canada, and then they move in to Cuba, and now Mexico to form the Technate, North American Union, and they have to clean up some of the cartels that they don't control, that have gone out of control. And don't get me wrong, these people have to be dealt with because they are terrorizing the population, extortion, killing, and shaking down farmers, avocado, lime growers. I mean, it's absurd, ridiculous. But then, what's the alternative long term? Moving us into the digital technocracy and algorithm ghetto. So that's about it. I think it's been about a half hour update. I don't know more I can tell you. I can scroll endlessly and compile data, and things are always developing, but I think the gist of it is it was crazy on Sunday. Things are back to normal for now. Traditionally, when this has happened, things have died down and things have quickly gone back to normal. That could be the case this time, but we can also see a further explosion. So this can escalate. So I've been saying they could quietly, the U.S. can increasingly, as I stated earlier, pressure Mexico, get further involved, and quietly clean up shop. That all depends on the interactions between them and the cartels, the Mexican government, the U.S. government. Or we could see all hell break loose. So that can also happen. We could see full-out civil war, multiple civil wars, a war between U.S. Sicario style, or what are the other movies? Sicario, or I haven't even seen Narcos, Netflix. So it can go either way. And I guess I did want to add this. Some people are saying it happened, has something to do with Anarchapulco. But I can't leave you without bringing these topics up of the Gnostic New Age theosophy stuff that just continues to be pushed by alt media and the podcast space and the Laurel Canyon 2.0 podcast space. Jeff Berwick was he was talking about invocation. He was doing an invocation. He was all but quoting channeling Alice Bailey, Lucifer Trust. And so here he's talking about some Melchizedek Christoph guy from the conference who charges like $9,000 per person for some retreat. Here's the clip.
But we'll see what happens. Also very cool that Christoph Melchizedek is here. He's actually been giving us all invocations to say. Actually, maybe I'll put it on screen. Yeah, I will do that. So these actually work, just so you know. When you say things, that's like magic. When you spell something, that's a magic spell. And all magic isn't bad. You can use it for good or bad. When you write in cursive, you can write a curse. So when you say these things out loud, they actually go into the energetic matrix, and they actually affect things. So I'm going to put this on screen, and maybe I'll leave it up for a few seconds, but you can also just pause the video. And if anyone wants to actually calm this all down so that we can kind of get out of here, all you have to do is recite what you see on the screen right now.
And it says, invocation of peace, order, and coherence in times of turbulence. Your voice equals the anchor point by the steadiness of my breath and the clarity of my center, yada, yada, yada. Nothing external dictates my inner state. Nothing chaotic pulls me off my axis. I stabilize my system. Let peace return through clarity. And I've read Lutz's Trust invocations, the Great Invocation and others, and this just, it feels like it could be straight out of Lutz's Trust. And so
Chaos.
I find that how alt media is increasingly pushing what I determine as theosophy. It's all sort of the chaos, which is being promoted by the globalism. And then as that is going on, you've got this whole, the Luciferian, theosophy converging at the same time for preparing people for after the chaos to sort of slide into the solution. This new answer, new way of dealing with all of the chaos is, the new world religion of occultist theosophy. And people ask me, why are you still in Mexico, Hrvoje? John DeTweet, who's down here in Mexico, as far as I understand, he just tweeted the other day. He says, you live in Mexico, but why? And it shows that lone penguin. Everyone's familiar with that penguin that left the group like a madman and just headed inexplicably towards the mountains. That's why I can't explain it. And just before I started this recording, my wife was out and about, and she tells me I was parking my car, and the guy was gonna get out, and he had a Croatian flag in his car, and she had to talk to him. And she said that he's a Croatian who lives here, who's married to a Mexican, and she asked him, would you go back to Croatia? Even with all of this stuff going on? Well, first of all, he says, he likes Mexico. His life is here. Even with everything that's going on, he wouldn't go back to Croatia. So, don't worry, folks. I'm content where I am. I've got plan Bs and Cs and Ds if I need to. Hop a flight to the US, to Europe. Or here's my plan D. And I'll sign off with this one. So that was the scene from Young Guns 2 with Kiefer Sutherland going out in a blaze of glory. And that was the song that I was playing driving back from church through the Narco blockade. So don't worry, folks. We can all take care of ourselves. And if our time has come, our time has come. I'm spiritually ready. to die. But yeah, no need to think about that yet. And I don't know what else to tell you. It's going to get a lot more. It's going to be getting crazy from here on out, and not just in Mexico, I believe, everywhere. So, vaya con Dios, Godspeed, as Arnie said in Terminator, hasta la vista, baby.